Hello, everyone. Welcome to your Sunday edition of the Expendable Show. And first, I want to say, happy Valentine's Day, belated to all you people out there. Hopefully, for most of you, it didn't turn into Happy Divorce Day, because that would suck. But man, you couldn't do anything in Atlanta. Everybody was out doing stuff, so I stayed home. I thought about going out and doing something, but then I was like, nope, stay home. A lot less people. So if you like my show, like, subscribe, and ding the bell. That's how the channel grows. Let's get through the sponsorships real quick. This episode is brought to you by Gatsby Trading Solutions and the Islamabad Telegraph. Hello, Bonnie. And if you're in Atlanta, make sure you come to the 404 Day Weekend Music Festival, which is going to be helped put on by yours truly, the Expendable. It's April 4th. April 4th of this year. That is when the festival starts. It'll be at the Atlanta Underground, the historical Atlanta Underground. I also got invited to do the promotions for their humongous Mother's Day event they're doing. So I'm gonna bring in all the wine vendors, every wine I can find. I'm bringing it in, and the mimosas. Listen, mimosas are huge here. There's people. If I would have went out today, and I would have went to anywhere by 10 a.m., there would be a bunch of drunk ladies in there drinking mimosas. Anywhere in Atlanta, it's like they go to church, early church service. Boom, mimosas. That's how it works around here. But let's go into our statistics, and then we'll start talking about the good stuff. So gas prices went down a penny, so we're at $2.92 a gallon on average, of course. The mortgage rates finally had some traction. So the mortgage rates dropped. We're at 5.875%. So that's good. Trump's approval rating, 42.2%. The Dow Jones closed on Friday at $49,500.93. So it went down a little bit, but I would expect, stuff goes up and down. It'll be back over 50,000 probably by Tuesday. Democrat Party approval rate went up 36%. So updates on the Nancy Guthrie situation. I mean, they detained like 4 people, but they end up releasing them. I'm not real sure if they're getting any closer. I mean, they've detained 4 people this time. They detained somebody last time. So that's 5 with no arrest. They haven't found anything. My question that I'm posing is, so at first they were like, well, she didn't have a subscription for her cameras, for her security cameras. So we're not going to be able to pull any of the information off of the cameras. And then boom, now we got this camera footage. Well, wouldn't you think that if they got the camera footage of him trying to get in, that they certainly would have the camera footage of him going out the door with Nancy? Maybe I'm missing something, but I feel like if you had it going in, you probably have it going out. So I do feel like they know what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Now, I've noticed that the media has been stating a lot of, we didn't find her body. The sheriff even said that. He's like, well, we didn't find her body. So are you guys telling us basically she's dead? Because until they're dead, they're still alive. But you guys keep, like, the media and the sheriff keeps referring to her body. That's how you refer to dead people. So I'm starting to think that they have seen the footage of him leaving, and they don't want to create this. Maybe there's something on there that could cause a panic. I don't know. Maybe she is dead when he drug her out of the house. Who knows? But I feel like there's more that they know than what they're telling us, obviously. So I think that she probably has passed on, and they're just trying to recover her body. Yeah, Linda, I'm on the same page as you on that. I think there's something they don't want us to see. Maybe it's too graphic for TV, but they're definitely. I think they have seen her leave, whether it was her getting drug out, because they are finding stuff like the gloves and stuff out and about. So I don't know. I think they're going to end up finding her dead body somewhere. So let's go into. So for those of you Kentucky people, your greatest politician of all time besides Mitch McConnell is Thomas Massie. So he has partnered up with the greatest do-nothing Democrat of all time, Ro Khanna, to turn into this Epstein files cooperation. And they've brought Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's now pretty much a Democrat, involved there. She's hanging out with the Code Pink people, which we talked about last week, which is funded by a bunch of communists. So that just shows you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's really jumped off the deep end. I don't know what happened to her. But Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie had this huge press conference with these victims. We'll come to find out, for one, none of the victims were underage. At the times they claim they were all in their 20s when they were with Epstein. So that I mean, it doesn't really pose a problem, but it shows that they were probably, it seems like they may have been volunteering their time in exchange for things. Hello, Rachel. And I may be wrong, but they're taking Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna's taking a lot of heat, especially since one of the victims admitted to recruiting minors to go to the island, and they were supposed to tell Epstein they're 18. So, like, they got the whole thing turned into a giant disaster because the internet figured out who everybody was, figured out what their backstory was, and it's just insane. This whole thing's insane. I think what happened was Massie and Khanna jumped off the deep end on some information that they didn't back check, and it turned into a disaster for them. They pretty much discredited themselves. And Ro Khanna, I reached out to his office several times in regards to the murder of Suchir Balaji that I helped investigate, and he didn't want no part of that either. So it's weird that now all of a sudden he wants to be a super saver when the OpenAI whistleblower was murdered and he didn't want to help out when it happened in his jurisdiction. Didn't want no part of it. He even went on Tucker Carlson's show and said he was going to help, but didn't. So, yeah. That tells me everything I need to know about Ro Khanna. I have zero faith in him. And Thomas Massie, I know some people in Kentucky like him, but I can't get on board with him. He's always against everything I like. So, but both lawmakers were among the first to review the unredacted files and publicly stated that at least 6 individuals appeared likely incriminated based on what they saw. They're pressured DOJ to remove additional redactions, which they've now found that Bill Clinton is in the Epstein files like over 2,600 times. Like, so they're trying to show that it's a bipartisan accountability effort. I disagree. So their collaboration, Republican and Democrat, was framed as a rare bipartisan stand for public disclosure. They argued that the DOJ had concealed names without clear legal justification. They're concealed names. For one, I just don't think lawmakers should be able to force should be able to force an investigation to reveal itself. I think it compromises the whole investigation. So I do think there's a problem with the Epstein Files Act. When you look at it from a law enforcement standpoint, because now people are going to know the specific information, the public will, that the law enforcement can't go back and interview new people, that new witnesses or whatnot, and get new information, because everybody knows everything now. They can't clarify anything with anybody because the whole world's going to know all the facts and details. So it's going to make it very hard to actually get a conviction now that the whole world knows the Epstein files. So I wanted the information to come out because I wanted to know who all was involved. But at the same time, I knew that if they pushed it, and the Biden administration had 4 years to indict anyone. And they did. I don't even think they looked at it. I think they took all the files, stashed them away, and said, nah, we're not doing this. And so, Pam Bondi's had a year to do something about it. Is that enough time with the millions of documents? Probably not. Considering all the other things that's going on in the country, when does the Department of Justice have time to really rapid fire go through millions of copies of documents and videos and text and everything that they had? It was going to be a difficult task. And I know I get on Pam Bondi pretty hard, but at the same time, I feel like maybe we should have let her take her time and get it right. But Massie and Khanna co-sponsored the law requiring the release of millions of Epstein-related documents with redactions limited to victims' identities. There's been a lot of public pressure leading to the DOJ to act. After they raised concerns, the DOJ unredacted more than a dozen additional names, showing their pressure had immediate impact, which one of those big names was Les Wexner from Ohio. He's the Victoria's Secret guy. There's actually a medical center in Columbus named after him. So it's on Ohio State's University campus. I wonder if they've taken his name off of it yet. But Wexner's been involved. We've known about Wexner since the beginning. Him and Epstein. That's how Epstein got his start, was through Les Wexner. So that's not a surprise. I think that's why they unredacted it, was because everybody pretty much knew Wexner's part of this whole shebang anyway. Epstein started off recruiting the Victoria's Secret models. So, or at least that's from far back as what I have been able to find. So the accusations of ruining innocent lives has occurred. So Massie and Ro Khanna are facing a lot of scrutiny right now because of the way that they did this. A Trump communications official sharply criticized both lawmakers, saying they knowingly and willfully ruined the lives of innocent people by publicizing names that the DOJ later said had no ties to Epstein at all. Because yes, there are thousands of names in the Epstein files, but that doesn't mean that all thousands of them were directly tied to anything Epstein was doing illegally. There's a lot of business deals getting talked about. There's a lot of diplomatic things getting talked about, but that doesn't mean that those people were committing crimes. So I think for them to jump off the deep end and implicate people just because their name was in the file, that's the wrong way to do it. I think they should have let the Department of Justice do this. I mean, you look at what happened in Norway. They got the one former politician, and they arrested him because they took their time and got it right. And I know most of the people involved in this are in the United States, and there's a lot more moving parts on our end. But, one person's been arrested, and it was somebody that the Norwegian government arrested. And now we're probably not going to get any arrests because we've jumped off the deep end and have compromised this whole case. Critics argued that their decision to read names on the House floor before context was fully established, like a bunch of idiots. It created a media frenzy that unfairly smeared individuals who were merely mentioned in documents for unrelated reasons. The DOJ stated that some redacted individuals had no interaction with Epstein, and their names appeared only in secondary references, like in media reports. This contradicted the lawmakers' implications that the redactions were suspicious. Hello? Their actions triggered criticism from the White House and partisan commentators who accused them of prioritizing attention over accuracy. And that's what Thomas Massie likes to do. He likes to get really loud and go against the grain on everything. And because he'll get these like his little minions of freedom fighters to go, look, Thomas Massie's fighting the man. But really, he's just that middle child that never listens to the parents because they're the middle child. That's basically kind of how he works. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the middle child. Yeah, so Rachel, it's a thing. There's definitely something there, but like what we're seeing, that they're having these press conferences with these victims, which, I mean, maybe they're victims, they probably are, but they were in their 20s. We're not seeing these major accusations in these files yet. I'm not seeing them. It's all these women in their 20s that were recruited or whatnot to go to the Epstein Island. And, the one girl, she testified, she's like, oh, these horrific things happened to me. But she was on Inside Edition years earlier, and she was like, oh, none of that stuff happened. I was just given massages. Like, that's all I did. So you're getting all these conflicting stories coming out, and it's going to make it very difficult for prosecutors to do anything about it, because now they have to sit here and differentiate between which is the truth. Were you trying to cover for somebody when you did the interview for Inside Edition, or are you up here making a performance to try to get a lawsuit for the victims? Like, what is it? Which way are you going to go? And so it compromises these things. And I feel bad because now it's some of these women probably are legit victims. But yet you have some that are looking for clout or looking for a payoff. So that's the bad part about it. It's just like with E. Jean Carroll. What people don't realize is those types of cases criminally, you don't need a smoking gun to indict them. You need a statement. That's it. And once that statement is presented to the grand jury, they can accept that indictment. So for E. Jean Carroll, for them to not indict Donald Trump, it tells me something, because it's easy to get an indictment on those types of cases. So, E. Jean Carroll went straight to the civil court. What was she looking for? I wonder. So there's a slippery slope when you deal with these cases. So now that the files are released, it's made it even harder. There's a lot of facts that they're going to have to find. So when members of Congress were allowed to view the unredacted Epstein documents, they had to do inside a secure reading room controlled by the House Judiciary Committee. And this is I love this. I'm not a fan of Pam Bondi at all, but I thought she was brilliant in how she did this. So there were no phones allowed, no laptops, no personal devices. Only committee-controlled computers would be used, and each one, Pam Bondi did get them. It's brilliant how she did it, and they're pissed. But they each had their own individual login. And so when they went in, they were able to see exactly what each individual congressperson searched in the Epstein files. And some of them searched their own name. So when you're looking at intent, the intent is there. Like, oh, am I in trouble? Do they know about me? That's what it implicates. So some of them outed themselves. So I thought Pam Bondi did a brilliant thing. Yeah, you know what? The Democrats are going to throw a fit, and they have been. They were going after her in the congressional hearing the other day, and they were saying, well, you're spying on us. Well, yeah, if your name is on the Epstein list as being somebody who's involved in those things, was Weddle and Bashir on the list? I didn't even think about to look for them. I mean, Bashir. So we did find, Nicole Hidalgo masterfully did find that there is a connection between Epstein and the state of Kentucky. Epstein did have interest in several things in Kentucky, so it wouldn't surprise me if Weddle and Bashir both were on that list. It's fun. I didn't even think about that. Oh, dang it. Nope, they weren't on the list. But Pam Bondi, she was serving as a Trump-aligned communications advisor during the release of the files. She later claimed that she knew what certain members of Congress searched for. She knew who they were looking up. She implied that their search behavior was suspicious. I would say so. I think Pam Bondi did a masterful thing. They want transparency. We want to know which ones you clowns is sweating these Epstein files. That's transparency. We know Hakeem Jeffries is mentioned in there, but yet he wants to get up on TV and talk about the Epstein File Transparency Act. Bro, your name's in it. How about you start explaining that? And so it's a problem. It's problematic now. They shouldn't have released the files. I would rather see people get indicted and arrested than see this thing get thrown out into the public and now we can't indict anybody. Now, there is no verified evidence as of right now that Pam Bondi personally monitored congressional search histories. She had access to the secure room's internet logs. She tricked lawmakers into revealing their searches, which is, I love it. I love it. She controlled her. There's no evidence that she controlled or manipulated the document viewing system. So that she did us a good service right there, I think. Yeah, it probably did violate some constitutional rights for these lawmakers. However, if they're under investigation, then it's a little bit different story. Members of Congress, including both Republicans and Democrats, were alarmed by the suggestions that an outside political figure knew what they searched and knew which names they looked up and could publicly weaponize that information. I think you should just resign. If you're worried about that, you should just resign. Just go ahead and just give up your seat. They're saying it undermines the transparency effort, which it does not. Massie, Khanna, and others were already under scrutiny for how they handled the unredacted names. Bondi's comments added fuel to accusations that the process was being politicized. Most analysts interpret Bondi's remarks as political posturing, an attempt to cast suspicion on lawmakers who criticized Trump-aligned narratives, or a way to suggest that certain members were looking for dirt. I don't care how it looks. It's telling to me. So going into one specific name that's mentioned that had a direct impact is a woman by the name of Catherine Rumler. She was one of Obama's White House counsels. Later, she became a top lawyer at Goldman Sachs. Epstein repeatedly met with her after she left the White House several times, mostly for professional networking, so they say. You know what? I agree with you. So it says I'm on the train that they were pulling the old reverse psychology when Trump, Bondi, and Patel were acting like there's nothing to see in the files. It made Dems insist on them being released. I can get on board with that. It does. The Democrats are so emotionally driven that it's basically what we've been seeing throughout the whole Trump administration through both of them. Anything Trump says, they want the exact opposite. So and they immediately do it without thinking. That's how Trump beats them every time, because they get so emotional and they just react instead of thinking. But Catherine Rumler, she just resigned after the Epstein files implicated her as a very close individual of Epstein. Goldman Sachs put out a statement that says that she had no improper relationship with him, which I don't know why Goldman Sachs would vouch for her, considering that they weren't really there. I'm probably not going to vouch for an employee if I didn't personally visualize or not visualize, that's something kind of shady to kind of stick your neck out for. But Goldman Sachs did. So that tells me they're trying to use their weight to help her. But they're saying that she did not resign from Goldman Sachs because of Epstein, even though some reports have said that she did. I would say that people would question her from that. So I was doing some other thinking, because there's a theory, right, Rachel, reactive instead of proactive. That's one of the main differences between party lines. That's true. So there's a theory that Pam Bondi released the files and then went back in and redacted the Rothschilds from it. Now that I don't know. I'm late to the game in looking at the Epstein files. I didn't jump off the diving board when they came out, so I'm not gonna say that happened or not. But it made me think, like, are the Rothschilds really that relevant anymore? Like, what are they really doing? So I looked into it a little bit. So the current leadership of the Rothschilds and company, so it kind of got split in two, because there's like a little beef between siblings. So it's not what it used to be. It's not this big power structure anymore. But Alexandre de Rothschild is the executive chair. He is the top operational leader of Rothschild and Company. He chairs the management board. He's responsible for strategic direction, financial oversight, internal controls, and regulatory capital decisions. So they're basically like a holding company, kind of like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, except they didn't get as big. I don't even think they're like the top 50 most wealthiest families in the world anymore. So the current lineage head of the Rothschilds family is Nathaniel Rothschild. He's the 5th Baron. He's listed as the current head of the family in modern genealogical records. So some of the notable ones: Hannah Rothschild, chair of the board of the N.M. Rothschild and Sons in the United Kingdom. There's Jacob Rothschild. So he died in 2024. He was the former patriarch of the English branch. His passing triggered a leadership transition within the family's UK holdings. Now, the one that I pay the most attention to, that I'm very familiar with, is Ariane de Rothschild. So she basically is headquartered in Switzerland, which is the country that I despise the most. She's the CEO of Edmund de Rothschild Group in Switzerland. Nuh-uh. I might get canceled after this one. I might just disappear off the face of it. If I disappear, you know what happened. The Rothschilds. But she's not part of Rothschild and Company. She's part of the split. But she's a major figure in the broader Rothschilds financial universe. So she's very, very in-depth with a lot of the World Economic Forum stuff. She is a main player in that. So she's somebody that you have to be very, very weary of. She's part of that Klaus Schwab, Larry Fink organization group of people. So I got into I get into it with Chat GPT all the time. I am constantly challenging Chat GPT because I've noticed, and I've talked about this on my show several times, the AI systems want to steer you in a direction, and they will withhold things that keep you going in the direction you're trying to go in. and they figure it out. The system figures it out real quick. And everything they get, every piece of information they give me, I question it. So I got into it today, and they were talking about solving world hunger. And, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are designed to help stop poverty and world hunger. When I was trying to get ChatGPT to admit that it's a socialist network meant to cripple the Constitution, which I wrote about in my book, The Swiss Effect. And so what I did was I tried to backdoor the information to ChatGPT. So I said, couldn't BlackRock solve world hunger with their $17 trillion in assets that they handle? And so it said, well, no, not really, but yes. And I said, well, BlackRock is the principal holder of almost every company on the planet. Couldn't they implement a systemic trickle down, donation system that each company's got to donate a certain percentage of their margin to stop world hunger? Why is the European and American taxpayer expected through the 17 Sustainable Development Goals to fund the stopping of world hunger when the giant corporations can do it? And so then it started. I think it was getting mad at me. I don't know if it has feelings, but I thought it was getting mad at me. So this is what they told me. They said BlackRock sets portfolio-wide expectations. Companies adjust to keep BlackRock support. Proxy voting enforces compliance. Other asset managers follow. Corporate behavior shifts across entire sectors. That's why BlackRock does climate, DEI frameworks, sustainability reporting, and governance reforms, because they can make money off that. You don't make money off of feeding the hungry. There's no investment firm that's for feeding the hungry. There's no capital gain from feeding the hungry. And that's what ChatGPT was basically telling me. Well, yeah, BlackRock could solve the hunger problem, but there's no money to be made in solving the hunger problem, so they're not going to do it. Their structure's not made to solve the hunger problem. And I was like, well, at least you're honest about it. So it said, so yes, if BlackRock wanted to push a Feed Hungry Children initiative, it could create systemic pressure across its holdings. And that's exactly where I was going with them, that BlackRock does have the ability to control and manipulate as they see fit, because they are the top of the umbrella, and they can trickle down their policies, which was given to them by Klaus Schwab's Fourth Industrial Revolution and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which Larry Fink, BlackRock CEO and chairperson, is now the acting chairperson of the World Economic Forum. So Europe is using that system of breaking down the Constitution through quasi-socialist policies through our major corporations and trickling that down to the smaller businesses and smaller corporations. So it's a system that is put in place. I'll admit it. It's masterful. The amount of thinking that Klaus Schwab and his little buddies had to do to come up with this is impressive. I'll admit it. But Donald Trump figured it out, because I think they tried to offer it to him in his first term, and he said, "No, I'm not doing that. I don't like it." And so I think that's why the rift happened. I think that's why they went after him with everything they had in the second round of him winning presidency. They wanted to end him because he was going to delay the 2030 deadline that Klaus Schwab wanted all this stuff done by. Why 2030? Well, because I think that was the time he thought, well, all I have to do is live long enough to 2030, so I can see this whole thing get put together, and then I can die happy that my world globalization plan worked. But Trump screwed it up, and that's why I think Schwab ended up stepping down, because he's like, well, my plan's out the window. Somebody can finish it for me, Larry Fink. And so that's kind of where that all went. And this stuff is all these players are all tied. Like Epstein is tied to all these guys. So for this globalization plan, it just solidifies what they think of the average human, that we are just a stock. We're stock that they can herd around and to give them their capital gains. Yeah, I mean, you do see it does trickle down to the small communities. That's exactly what it's designed to do. It's designed to hit every aspect of our economic system all the way down. And that's why it's so hard for small businesses, mom and pop shops, to make it, because they don't allow it. And as soon as you start to make gains and you start to build your small business, then boom, the asset management companies want to come in and buy you out, or invest, or turn you into a privately traded company so they can go buy majority of your stock, and then they're the controlling management partner. So the system's set up for Larry Fink, people like Larry Fink, to run your company eventually. It's sick. It's sad, but that's how it works. That's the only real knock that I have on our capitalist society. I believe that you should be able to go as high as you want, but at some point, when you have a company as big as BlackRock, it's fail proof. BlackRock is fail proof. And then I've invented a word called the triopoly. If you ask ChatGPT, it'll tell you that I invented the word. But it's basically, so BlackRock invests in Vanguard, Vanguard invests in State Street, and State Street invests in BlackRock. It's three major asset management companies that invest in each other. They hold major stocks in each other, so they all have a say in their boards to keep this system going. It's fail proof. It can never, if one goes down, they all go down. And the society's never going to let that happen, because they're the controlling part. They're the controlling management of every major company in the world. So it's a big giant, I think it's like a black market, kind of like they control it. So yes, when we're looking at the World Economic Forum, and we're looking at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and we're looking at all the people that are involved with Epstein, Andy Beshear is involved with the World Economic Forum. Anthony Beshear is a huge supporter of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Why do you think the whole state of Kentucky went to, like, he was pushing the EVs? Yeah, and you know what? That's right. So he said, I think the Epstein files in Hollywood shows that you can really only be a top player if you sign up to their agenda. That's absolutely right. You got to get on board, or they're never going to let you make it. Now, I'm going to be interested to pay it very close attention to, like, Nicki Minaj. I believe that at one point Nicki Minaj was part of the group, and something happened. Whatever happened, Nicki Minaj has alienated the in crowd. Now, I'm wondering if her career is going to go down the toilet. Hopefully, the conservatives will hold her up. I think they will. I know that her music doesn't fit. I don't think her music fits conservative values, but her ideals and principles do. She's seems to be more level-headed of mind than what I've ever seen her. So, hopefully the MAGA people will take care of Nicki Minaj. So corporations are designed to optimize for profit. That's what they do. So solving world hunger doesn't make money. Nobody's going to do it. Asset managers optimize for returns. So they're not going to do it. Governments fill the humanitarian gaps. So they're going to leave it up to the governments, which in turn, the government's going to say, taxpayer, we're going to need to solve hunger. We need your money. And so that's where this system is broke. If there's not a tax write-off for it, they're not going to do it. And they do donate to these organizations, but like what we've seen with the Doge audits, that we found that most of these international organizations and these nonprofits was just a giant money laundering scam. So there's a reason why the hunger never got solved, because the money never went to the hungry kids. It went right back to the politicians' pockets. So there's a system, and I've talked about this on my show before. There's a book that is one of my favorite books of all time, and this is kind of lame because it was written by Glenn Beck, and it's called The Overton Window. And that was the first time I'd ever really understood what our government system does to us. And basically, they take the minimum amount of something that we can accept in society and the maximum amount of what we can accept in society, and they allow the events to happen somewhere in the middle. And then once that happens and we get used to that event, they move the Overton window to something more radical. And then they get in the middle of that window again. And then they just keep moving it more radical and radical and radical. So that's kind of what they've done to us with the SDGs and with the World Economic Forum and this whole progressive movement. They've just gradually kept moving the Overton window on us to accept this and accept that. Well, we need to save the planet because the planet's going to die tomorrow. We got to stop carbon emitting. The cows are farting too much. All this stuff. Greenhouse gases are going to make the whole planet melt. That's all from all this. So that's all I'm going to talk about with that. Trump did screw it up. He's been dialing back the SDGs and like the climate action, which is SDG 13. He dialed that back. Yeah, you know what? I was just talking about that earlier today about how the Epstein files comes out, and now we're on a reality show, Savannah Guthrie's mom, for the next, we're getting ready to start week 3. So, yeah, I do think it's quite ironic. And we're just getting like every day there's like one extra piece of information they're giving us. It's like they're slow walking this whole thing out for a duration. But Trump's dialing back some of these initiatives. So I'm going to talk about a case in McCreary County today, one that I made a short about it, and it seems like it got some traction. I find every bit of this case suspicious. The more and more that I look into it, the more suspicious it gets. So this is about Darren Kidd. So he was reported missing January 4th of 2018 from Pine Knot. He was found 4 months later in April in a river. So we're talking about he went missing in Kentucky January, and he was found in April in a river. Okay, that might not seem so suspicious right now, but as the facts come to me, it gets more and more crazy. So the location that he was found in this river was 3 miles from where he was last seen. Not suspicious. He just took off and started walking, ended up at the river. Maybe he slipped and fell and passed away in the river. That's what it could sound like. The river was very shallow. That doesn't necessarily mean anything either, because babies, kids, adults can die in an inch of water. So, however, the river was frozen over. Now I'm going to show you a picture of Darren. Here's Darren Kidd. So he's a pretty good guy. Everybody seemed to like this guy. They said he was one of the kindest people ever. So, I've had a lot of people hit me up about this case and have provided information. And so it's something that I'm probably going to end up deeply involved in here pretty soon. But I am going to give you the river. So here, this was taken 2 weeks after he disappeared. So this is the river frozen over. So for him, he left. It was the middle of winter in Kentucky. He ends up at this river that's frozen over. So how did he drown in the river? So the death certificate, I believe, says drowning. I think that's what they're saying. However, and there's confusion around that because the autopsy doesn't say drowning. As a matter of fact, on the respiratory part, this is the document from the autopsy. He has a perfectly, his respiratory system's fine. There's no signs of drowning. There's no damage to his respiratory system. So if you drowned, wouldn't there be signs of I mean, I'm not a doctor or a medical examiner, but I would think that, if you choke someone, they're going to get little pin needles. There's going to be some kind of reaction from when you have asphyxiation. You develop little pin needles because the oxygen is starting to come out of your skin. So the fact that there's nothing in the respiratory part of his autopsy is suspicious to me. This is where it gets suspicious. And so it was a frozen over river. They said when they found him that he had a foot in the river and he had one sock on, just one sock. He was butt naked, with one sock on. Yet they found articles of his clothing, a boot and a shirt, scattered throughout the woods. So what did he do? He left this house that he was at, started walking through like some really rough terrain, from what I understand, and just started stripping in the middle of January, and then just stuck his foot in the water and it froze around him and he died. It doesn't add up. This doesn't add up. And then there's no signs of drowning, which they declared him drowned. So this is a scenario. And then we'll look at that's the wrong one. Here's the river. I'll bet you this river is maybe 4 inches deep. We have a 4-inch deep river. So he was found by kayakers, allegedly. This river does not look like an area that can be kayaked. I mean, you just basically be putting your paddle in and pushing it along rocks. I'm struggling with this. Maybe after the snow and ice melted, the river levels went up. That's maybe that's a possibility. Maybe it rained. It was April. I mean, that's a wet season for that time, for that area, that time of year. This could be that scenario. I don't know exactly what the water height was that day, but this picture shows that river is generally very shallow. So that's another part that doesn't quite make sense. Now, I'm not going to point fingers. I'm just saying that the information that I have is a little bit suspect. And then we have his girlfriend at the time, I believe. She puts out a few days after he goes missing and specifically states that he's probably wet from the river. How do you know he was in the river? That's a good question. How do you know he's in the river? How do you know he's wet? He just took off and went walking. Now, here's another kicker. This is the respiratory. I have his toxicology report. So he did test positive. I mean, paradoxical undressing, maybe. I'm not going to rule anything out at this point. I'm just saying that as I collect more, and I have a bunch more information I've got to go through. I just didn't have time this weekend. But his toxicology report came back that he had benzos in his system and meth. So he was jacked out of his mind. There are a lot of theories. Now there's a lot of information that I do know, but I can't speak on it yet because I have to confirm some things. The sheriff at the time, Sheriff Waters, he said there was no foul play. I don't know how you can even remotely say there's no foul play when, to me, reading the entirety of the autopsy shows that we really don't know how he died. It's a mysterious death. I mean, so what happened? Did he just walk and he just fell over and died? Maybe his heart just stopped. I don't know. I mean, it was cold. I'm looking for more information, and I'm not going to reveal anything that I do know of some of the backstory items, obviously, because I need to be able to confirm information. So those of you in McCreary County, those of you who have any information, I need to hear it, because I know just by hearing from some of the people I've already heard from that there's more people that know things. And so I need to know them, because I'm not buying the no foul play. I don't think you can rule out anything at this point. The phone, he had a phone plan that was with a guy named Doug Strunk, who ended up saying, well, hey man, there's people threatening me. And then a few weeks later, he dies in a car accident. So there's a lot to the story. The girlfriend making that statement a few days after is very suspicious. I would have probably pulled her in and said, hey, well, what makes you think he's in a river? The family has said that they had looked in that area several times and never saw any body. So I'm still trying to figure out the decomposition of the body so I can compare it to what a natural body would decompose at, to see if the timeline's been altered. Potentially if he was frozen out there, it's going to screw up the timeline anyway. Or if he was hypothetically in somebody's deep freezer, that would screw up the timeline. But if he was just out in the open air and it's not frozen, he would decompose at a normal rate. So, there's still some factors I need to consider into looking into. There's also his phone was used after the fact. There's still some forensics that we can do to that. The phone is still active or is still available to use. So I'm going to be hunting down some forensics people that will be able to pull everything that they can off of that phone. So that's basically where we're at. Now, if you guys have tips, I have my tip email, theexpendableshow@gmail.com, McCreary County. Let me know everything that y'all got. I need all the help I can get on this one. That's the show for this week, and I'll be back on Wednesday. I'm out. Peace.